The woman reprimanded the girl and yelled about having Viscount Eridan's son last time, asked who it would be this time, said ironically about the third prince. The woman told Cecil Leiden that she was completely crazy and asked how a self-respecting noblewoman could change men like gloves. The woman shouted that she didn't want to see her anymore and let her pack her things and get out of this house. The girl said she would leave without her yelling. She said so because she knew it wouldn't do any good to say that everything she was saying was just baseless rumors. She was completely calm in her decisions. Cecil Leiden was an earl's daughter and a promiscuous woman who would spend the night with any man. She was called a disgrace of the Leiden family. It was her stepmother who spread such rumors. She disliked her daughter from the very beginning. After the girl said that she was leaving, the woman was shocked and perplexed and asked her again. And the girl confidently said that she was leaving the estate. When the girl turned around and started to leave, the stepmother yelled after her that she had no place to go and let her go to her room immediately and don't give her any reason to waste her nerves. The stepmother was furious and called the girl an impertinent child and added that she had obviously gone to her mother. The girl packed all her things into her suitcase and realized that she would never regret leaving this place. She packed her suitcase and put on her coat. When Cecil was in the carriage, she asked the coachman to take her south. She didn't care if she had to live in poverty, she'd still be better off than there with her stepmother. The girl was welcome anywhere, but not in that hellhole where she felt disgusted. A girl came to some village and started to communicate with the locals. She didn't tell them her real name. To them, she was Shah. They all looked at her with disdain because she was without a last name, which meant she was not a noblewoman. They reasoned that if she was from some fallen family, they couldn't be sure they wouldn't get into trouble. The girl assured them that she would be of use to them. She said she knew how to treat wounds, and if there was no healer in the village, she could help. The villagers said they usually don't accept outsiders, but this time they had a house available and pointed out where the girl should go. They said they wouldn't chase her away if she decided to stay and made an exception for her. So she has to try her best to live up to expectations. The girl was very happy and thanked them. She was even glad that she would get used to the simple life for a while and then move to another village. She decided that it would be better for no one to know that she was a noblewoman. One morning, a man came to the girl asking her to look at what was wrong with his leg. When the girl looked at his wound, she said she would have to cut the clothes around it. The man said that with the healer their life was getting much easier and that without her their village wouldn't be as good. Suddenly, their conversation took a different direction, and the man asked if she was married, and asked again how old she was. He assumed 23, but the girl said she was not yet 23. The man said his son liked her a lot, and it was hard for a child to grow up without a mother, and if such a beautiful girl would become part of their family, he would. But the girl told him to be quiet if he wanted to leave with a whole leg and pressed the bandage hard against the wound. The man said the girl was very strong, and the girl calmly replied that the disinfection was finished. The man said that he thought single people should help each other and she would have to get married soon anyway. The girl did not react and said that the treatment cost 4 silver coins. The man, when he heard that she wanted 4 silver coins, said that he would not give so much, and added that she was behaving very insolently in spite of the fact that this village had sheltered her. The man could not get up, and the girl said that if he wanted a crutch, he had better pay for his treatment. The man angrily tossed her the coins and said that he could tell everything to the head of the village. But the girl took the money and said she didn't care much who or what he told, and added that if he held on to the crutch like that, he would damage the nerves in his armpit and become paralyzed. The man, frightened, asked what that meant, and she told him that his upper half of his body was just paralyzed. The man asked, with a shiver in his eyes, what was the right way for him to hold on to the crutch she gave him. Cesar asked if he would go to the head of the village, but the man said he wouldn't and asked if she would help him with the crutch. When he left, the girl thought about the fact that she had to get out of there as soon as possible. She counted the money and saw that she had enough for a wagon to the next village. Though she had a hard time with some of the villagers, she felt more freedom there than at Leiden Manor. The girl decided that she was closing up for the day and remembered that she had to close the back door, but suddenly she heard a rumble. She ran outside and saw an injured man there, all covered in blood. She asked if he was okay and started checking his bones. The man didn't answer, and the girl looked at him and realized she had better get him somewhere warm. The girl brought him to her house and left him on the floor because she didn't have the strength to lift him onto the bed. First, she decided to check his wounds. But suddenly, the boy woke up and started pressing his hand against the wound. Caesar yelled for him to take his hands away from the wound and noticed that his fingertips were turning blue and it looked like he was also poisoned. The girl yelled for him to take his hands away from the wound, but he told her she better get away from him and not come any closer. She asked that he bear with it for a while and told him it would be okay. She tied his hands together and told him it wouldn't be long. As she began to examine the wound, she realized that it had been a long time since he had received this wound. So on top of that, he had also been poisoned by the venom. She assumed that he realized how deadly the touch could be, and so he tried to push her away. The girl urgently needed to find out the type of poison to pick up an antidote, but she had no time left and realized there was no choice. Closed his eyes and told him it would be hard to cope at night. Imagined his hands to the wound, and suddenly a bright white color filled the room. White healing light was a secret skill that she had kept hidden her entire life, even from the Leiden family. The whole family was endowed with dark magic, and the girl didn't get it. Instead, she was born with the gift of healing that could save people. The Leiden family didn't know about the girl having such a skill, but every time, they'd look down on the girl because she didn't possess dark magic. The girl continued to save him, but the wound wasn't healing and the girl thought that it was probably too deep, and she had the feeling that she was losing more and more energy with each use of the healing light. The girl was very tired and sat down. She hadn't completely healed it, but she thought that what she had done would be enough, especially since there was no more poison left. The girl flopped down on the bed. She was dizzy because the healing gift had severe side effects, but she was glad because she had saved a person. Caesar praised herself for such an act. In the morning, there was another knock at the girl's door, calling her very loudly. Caesar ran to the door, opened it, and saw a boy with a girl on his shoulders behind it. She saw that the children were in tears and told the boy to put the girl on the bed. The boy was very surprised to see the man with blood on the floor, but he went around him and put the girl on the bed. Sessions began her examination and saw that the girl's lips were turning blue. She was bent over and holding her stomach. She realized that it looked like food poisoning. She asked the boy if he knew what she had recently eaten. He said he wasn't exactly sure, but she seemed to have eaten a mushroom, a beautiful one with a red hat, and then she got hotter and said her stomach hurt. He was in tears asking what was wrong with his little sister, and the girl realized that there were a lot of red hat mushrooms growing in the neighborhood, and most of them are poisonous. She didn't understand what the girl could have been poisoned by. She went to her cupboard of herbs to draw out the poison and chose one that would help with her stomach ache. The girl realized that it would only work if the poison was non-lethal, and realized that the girl could get worse at any moment. The healer stood near the stand, and suddenly a man who was tied to the bed stood behind her and pointed to other herbs, saying they would help better. The girl turned around. He smiled at the girl and said he was about help for the child. The girl realized that he was the one who had pointed out the herbs she had taken, and she herself remarked that they would work better. She was making the medicine quickly, and the boy was helping her and handing her a saucer. The girl looked at him and assumed he often held a sword and his hands smelled of soap. The man said he thought it would be better to wash his hands before touching the child, and asked if he had done the right thing. The girl said he was absolutely right. The healer approached the girl and told her to drink the decoction. The girl drank it, but kept crying and saying she was still in pain. But Caesar calmed her down. The girl said that she would feel better soon, as she and her brother had made a medicine that would help her defeat the badness inside her stomach. The boy asked if they would defeat the red mushroom, and Caesar played along and told him that they were so strong, it would take a little time. The little brother told his little sister with a smile that she would be better soon, and taking her on their shoulders, they said they would bring her a flower necklace. The children thanked and left. Caesar happily said goodbye to them. The man said that the girl had a very pretty name, and she wondered that he was definitely not a commoner, because judging by his uniform and knowledge of medicine, he was definitely not the last man. So she asked him if he was a nobleman. The girl thought about the fact that if he was a nobleman, he might know about Caesar and must have heard rumors that she was the promiscuous woman of the Lyddon family. She ran away because she was tired of the shame. But even there, she managed to stumble upon a nobleman. The man said he was, and his name was Diane. The girl got nervous, and the man said that he was not from this land. And it seemed that he owed her a great debt because the wound was severe, and he asked her what she had treated it with because he was just wondering how it was possible to heal such a severe wound and remove the poison so cleverly. The girl said it was a secret. It took a lot of energy to heal her, and if the Lyddon family found out about her gift, they would use it until she faded away and died. So she wanted it to remain a secret. The guy said that if it was a secret, then let it stay a secret, because he wasn't brazen enough to question his rescuer. The girl asked if the monster hurt him, but he said it wasn't really a monster. Sessions said he shouldn't even worry about it. He said that they wanted to attack only him, and the girl was surprised and asked if it was an assassin. But he answered nothing, saying that he would do anything to keep her from harm, and said he had to go. After saying goodbye, the guy walked out. It was a normal day in the village and everyone was chatting among themselves. The woman thanked Caesar for coming and helping them and asked when their next visit was or how many days later. The girl said in a week, and the woman said she used to examine everyone every 3 days. The girl stopped examining them so often. The healer realized that she was unlikely to stay in the village until the time of the examinations. The girl remembered the man who had been injured, and she thought he was rather mysterious. Suddenly, she noticed a pouch on her desk and didn't realize what it was. Taking it in her hands, she saw that it contained gold coins. Now she had enough money. Residents asked one by one to be looked at. A girl came up to the girl and said that she had torn her knees when she fell. Sessions asked if she was in a lot of pain. The girl waved her head. The healer said she would treat with antiseptics. It would hurt a little more, and said she could cry if she couldn't take it. All that was left to do was bandage, and suddenly the Diane she had rescued recently appeared behind the girl's back. He handed her the bandages she had run out of, and she hadn't noticed him. And the girl thanked him and told the girl to be more careful next time, told her that there was medicine on the other leg and it wouldn't bleed anymore. The girl turned back and saw the man. He told her that they had met again. The girl was shocked because she thought he had already left and the bandages were being given to her by someone from the village. Caesar didn't expect to see Diane in any way. She wondered if he was a truthful nobleman. He certainly didn't have time for such nonsense, especially after the attack. But he said he wanted to stay a little longer and asked if he could. The guy said she spent time in that place every day, so she was probably bored with it by now. The wind picked up and the guy handed her a box of herbs that stopped bleeding. The girl didn't understand how he knew about them and asked if he had studied phytotherapy, that is, prevention with herbs. And the guy said he had studied something similar. The girl was surprised to hear such a thing. Suddenly, the girl's dad appeared from behind and asked how she was doing. Sessions said he was just in time and started to name a price, but the man interrupted her, saying that he had heard a funny story when he had visited the castle recently, and that was why he was looking for her. But the girl didn't understand why he might need her after the trip to the castle. All the people started eavesdropping because they thought they would talk about something interesting. The villagers liked to spread rumors. And the man began his story. He said that there were rumors about a young girl whose features were very similar to her. He said that the names were not even very different, and he started to remember the name of that girl, and without remembering, he said that that girl was from some famous noble family. Suddenly, he remembered her name. Everyone heard the name Caesar. Diane, who was treated by the girl, was surprised when he heard it. And that man kept saying that aristocrats were always whispering behind each other's back, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But when they talked about the blonde-haired girl with deep pink eyes, he immediately thought of the healer from the village. And he said that it seems that that girl used to walk around from head to toe covered with the finest jewelry all the time, and every man who wanted to introduce himself to her had to bring an expensive piece. And then she would point with her foot at what she chose. and then she would give herself to him for one night. The man said that it was really hilarious and everyone started laughing. But Caesar said that there were all kinds of people in this world and tried to stay calm. The man said that there are indeed such people, but nobles are on a whole other level. The girl tried her best not to show emotions, because if she showed even one, they might realize that she was Caesar. The girl had never tried to dress up in all the most expensive clothes or choose men based on gifts, but the truth didn't interest the nobles who spread rumors or the people who listened to them. It was just a fun story they wanted to discuss. And the girl asked for the treatment fee, and the man threw her 1 coin for helping his daughter and said they would see each other again. But suddenly the girl started having flashbacks of some man tossing her a coin and asking if what he was giving her was enough for him to pick her flower. She didn't understand why these bad memories were suddenly appearing in her mind, and took the coin and started packing to leave the place. It was getting dark, and Diane was thinking about how he got to that place that day, as his eyes were very blurry and he felt like he was dying. He started to remember that day and how he couldn't walk. His fingertips were all numb, and even though he had a high resistance to poisons, that poison still spread very fast. He realized that it was the paralyzing poison of the Tier family, and he knew that only the head of the family had an antidote. He realized that his heart was about to stop. After that, he fell down and realized that most likely he would not die at that place. But suddenly, Diane heard a girl's voice, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a woman with pink eyes. They were like the petals of the trees his mother loved. The man wondered how the healer was able to neutralize the poison and almost completely heal the wound, because he didn't notice anything special about her, and to her she was like a surprised rabbit. He cringed as he pictured her as a rabbit who would run away if anyone tried to learn his secrets. And the man thought he had a little more time before he had to go back, so he might as well stay a couple of days. He wondered what was keeping him here. Dropped it all on curiosity. The men sat in a circle around the fire and talked about the story of their healer. The man who told the story said that he had explained that when she had first appeared in their village, she had looked like a girl from a wealthy family, and he had asked them how a commoner could have a chance to learn to be a doctor. She looked like a girl from a wealthy family, and he asked them how a commoner could have a chance to learn to be a doctor. The other man asked if they meant to say she was a promiscuous noblewoman, and they said they had said 100 times already that it was all true. Diane listened to this and wondered, and the men theorized that her clinic was just a cover for something else. They decided that the clinic was just a shield from hiding the fact that she was doing something dirty. Diane decided to distract himself and step away because they were talking about something that didn't concern him at all, and got distracted by the tree. But he didn't expect to see it outside the garden. He broke one twig and noticed that he had a feeling of disgust after the words of those men. He thought that perhaps the reason was her eyes, because something in them reminded him of his late mother. Diane knew that if you set fire to a branch from that tree without first drying it, you could get a strong paralyzing poison. If you inhaled the smoke, your nose, mouth, and lungs would harden, and an agonizing death would ensue. The men kept talking about how it was a strange situation, because why would she leave her rich home to come to that wilderness? Suddenly, they all dropped dead. Even the mere rumors smelled of garden treachery. The guy dealt with them so they wouldn't spread any more nasty things about Cecia. Guy noticed that it was obvious from her reaction that they weren't wrong. But it didn't look at all like the minx from the rumors, because she was very nice to him and thanked him for basic help. But if the rumors of the nobles were to be followed, Diana was greatly embellished. Everyone talked about how that guy was sweet, kind, and someone who knew no blood or tears. And he was considered the best groom in the empire. He believed that rumors could rarely be believed. The girl woke up thinking that they were probably all joking around, and she would be leaving this place soon anyway. She just decided that she wouldn't pay attention. She realized that if the rumors had even reached that village, it was about Theoda. She assumed something serious had happened since her stepmother had to divert attention with new stories about her. The girl wondered what he had done that time. Continued gambling, fighting, or women. Her stepmother wasn't shy about making up dirty, nasty stories about her, and it all depended on the amount of trouble her brother was causing her and thanks to the fact that people said he grew up to be a normal person compared to his sister. The girl decided that she wouldn't go through all this humiliation and thinking anymore, and would gather some grass, since she couldn't sleep anyway. She decided that a little walk would cool her head down. She decided to start by preparing what she would need on the trip. The herb she wanted to gather was often used on common wounds, so it was necessary to take it with her. The girl walked amongst the field and searched for herbs. She already had enough money for the move. Suddenly, she saw the very guy, Diana, in the distance. He was surprised to see the girl, and she smiled sweetly at him. The man was surprised to see the girl and said that she was out quite late and asked if she was out collecting herbs. The girl said she was out collecting herbs because she had thoughts swarming in her head and couldn't sleep. A man came and sat down beside her and asked if she needed Litane and offered his own to help her. The girl was surprised, and he asked if she had a spare knife. The girl handed her spare knife to the guy. He quickly gathered the herbs and asked if it would come off the way he did. Seeing him cut the herb, the girl was surprised because it was perfectly done, and he knew that after separating the root, the petals would become poisonous if exposed to moonlight. She remembered that he had said he had studied something similar. The girl smiled at the guy and thanked him for his help. The guy said they had collected quite a lot and asked if she planned to use these herbs to treat the villagers. The girl decided not to admit that she was going away and collecting for her trip, and said that she was collecting because herbs are good for simple wounds, and the villagers often have many such injuries. The man suddenly asked the girl where she got such friendliness from. At first, the girl did not understand the question, and the man repeated that he was asking why she was so friendly to those people in the village. He said the place was full of villagers who would be only too happy to betray her, and asked if she didn't suspect anyone or just had no idea what thoughts they were spreading behind her back. The girl said that she can't suspect every person she meets, and she knows that most of the villagers are not very friendly, but she will still treat them while she lives there because although she is not loved there, she is sheltered and given a home. The man was surprised and asked why that was so. And she said that she was used to dealing with people's hostility because not everyone would be so mean to her. If she kept helping others, she would have a chance to receive kindness in return. That was what she believed. The man was shocked because she puts herself in such risks just for a ghostly chance and believes in luck and thinks she can take it all. Diane thought about it and realized that she has ideals and she is the complete opposite of him. And suddenly he remembered his mother saying that if she didn't believe in that man, how could he? The price of faith was very high. And he realized the essence of this world at the age of 6. And Cecilia suddenly said that he could already guess that she didn't come from there. She said that her old home was filled with people who hated her, and it was mutual. She had no one to talk to and no one to confide in, and so she left there so she wouldn't suffocate. In the outside world, she could find a place where she could breathe, and she found this village where she felt free. The man asked if she was looking for someone she could trust, and the girl said she was. And the guide looked at the girl and saw his mother in her. He couldn't take his eyes off her and decided that it was because her smile and eyes reminded him of his mother. But he decided not to look at her like that because she was just a stranger he had met a few days ago, and he was sure that if she couldn't give anything back to those residents, she would just become nothing but fodder for their funny stories. He was afraid she might get hurt. He asked if she wanted to just smile all the time and then get stabbed in the back, just like his mother who believed her first love and drank poison tea, and her heart stopped before the smile was even off her face. He was very angry, and Sessions said it probably wouldn't be pleasant to get stabbed in the back, but she wouldn't run away if she wanted to collapse in a place where she trusted no one, and she'd never end up there. The girl said she left her home to change and got out of her nightmare, if only for a moment, to find something she could believe in. She said that life wouldn't change by just standing still. The guy couldn't look away from her. She didn't do anything, but to him she looked very charming. He remembered that in his homeland there was a Radhika called the plant of temptation. To him the girl was like that plant. She tempted him by her very appearance. He wanted to protect her so she would never lose that smile. He never even thought he would be so infatuated and crazy to see a girl. But he remembered his mom stroking his head and telling him that one day he would understand how she felt when she was headed there. Even when it became obvious that everything was a trap, set back by a hostile family, she had answered a letter from the man of her first love. He had always thought his mother's actions were stupid, but now, if that girl handed him poisoned tea with a smile on her face, he would still happily drink it. He realized that it was most likely love, and he seemed to be beginning to understand a mother he never hoped to understand. The guy looked at the girl, not taking his eyes off her smiling face, which imprinted in his head. He turned his back to the girl, and she didn't realize what he was doing and asked him what he was doing there. They came quickly into the house, and the girl told him to sit down in a chair at the table and show her the wound. He said there was nothing wrong with it and it would heal quickly, so they could do nothing. She yelled at him that she had to help and accidentally hit him. The girl apologized for hitting him, and the guy said it was okay and let her continue. The girl told him that he had blood on his clothes and on his white shirt. He again introduced her as a rabbit and told her not to worry about it and asked if he could ask her a question. The girl nodded her head, and the guy said that she had said she didn't get along with the people she lived with in the old house and asked if he could find out the reason why. The girl thought about the fact that he was leaving that village anyway. They would never see each other again, so she decided it was okay to tell him a little. She said it was because everyone loved her brother more than her, and her stepmother lived with them. And she was apparently afraid that the girl might take something away from her, though she had never thought of such a thing. The guy asked if that was the only reason she left. The girl said that in that house they would hardly be happy to know that she could heal people, and she realized that even the fact that she and Diane were just sitting there could create a lot of scandals for her. The guy sadly said that they were very ignorant of her talent and felt sorry for her. He said that it was very easy to hurt others, but to truly care was hard work, and those people completely failed to understand her value. He realized that it sounded like she was having a very hard time, thanked her for healing him, and left the house. The girl couldn't think calmly about what had happened, but after all that, it felt like she was flying in the clouds. She saw the flowers and didn't realize when he had time to pick them. She got embarrassed, and with the flowers in her hands, thought about the fact that maybe he could believe her words. She wondered if he could handle what her own family couldn't, and realized that she would have a hard time finding a man who would understand her as well as Diane did. They had just met, but the girl was already sad that they would have to part. She heard the sound of hooves, but she was surprised because there were no people with horses in that village. A house was rushed in, and she saw a man in the uniform of the Ledden family. He grabbed the girl by the arm and yelled at her for hiding like a rat. He started dragging the girl out of the house. She was in a lot of pain. He dragged her into the carriage. All her thoughts were jumbled. Everything was swimming in front of her eyes. The girl heard someone in the background talking about the feud region and discussing why she had traveled so far away and speculated that there was a clinic there. When the girl felt better, she saw her father. She heard it said that she had absolutely no independence and could not even think of treating people. The girl saw Theav and heard her father order that the place where she lived be burned down without leaving a trace. He also ordered that a 24-hour guard be presented to the girl. Her stepmother said that she was a very dishonorable noblewoman because she had gone to live among the commoners. Her father yelled at her and told her not to disappoint him even more. His father turned to Thed and said that Marquis Viaz was an understanding man because he had agreed to forget his misdeeds, and asked his son to practice patience. The stepmother shouted at the girl and asked how she dared to leave and not say anything to her. She ordered the maids to quickly make her look human because they had to go to Marquis Viaz's reception soon, and she still looked terrible. Eventually, the girl did make it back to where there was not a single person on her side, to that same hellish pit of despair. The woman said Caesar would find out on the day of departure what she had to do at the banquet. The maids were lifting the girl to carry and wash her, and she realized that the stepmother wanted to use her again to interrupt the rumors about Theoda. The stepmother said she was good for nothing and ordered her to behave herself if she didn't want to end up at the bottom. It was all very sad because the girl had just had a taste of freedom and thought about whether there could be any place worse than her home. She really missed the hill behind the clinic and remembered Diane, who felt sorry for her and said that her relatives just didn't understand her worth and supported her. She was sure she would never again see the one person who believed in her, Diane. Sometime later came the day of the Marquis of Viaz banquet. The girl was wearing a lot of jewelry and this jewelry was supposedly a gift from those with whom she had spent the night. The girl gasped. She thought about the fact that she could take a moment and jump out of the carriage, but she still wouldn't be able to escape and would only attract more attention. So she dismissed the idea. She wondered what rumors there would be this time and what new things her stepmother had come up with. Before entering the banquet, they were stopped by a man and asked to see their invitation. The doors opened, and when the man saw Cecia, he said they could drive through and they would do their best to make sure she had a comfortable time. The girl was surprised because she was usually called that woman and ridiculed. Suddenly, she heard the man say that they had been warned about that carriage and asked him to open the gate. Cecia was surprised and didn't understand who had warned them. She thought it might be Thid who was up to something crazy. The carriage stopped, and from the girl, the knight apologized for the disturbance, saying that his master wished to invite her to the meeting, so he had warned the Marquise of Vias in advance. But he added that her consent came first. The girl was surprised and asked who his master was. The man said that his master was the Grand Duke of Karkia. The girl was surprised and thought that this might be the one called the kindest man in history. His reputation was the opposite of hers. The girl didn't understand why he would go out with her. The man who represented the Duke said his name was Muan. He said he had been ordered not to bring her unless she wanted to. The girl noticed the coat of arms on his uniform and remembered seeing one at banquets. It was the emblem of the Duke's family. The girl did not understand why he needed it, but decided that it was better than to go to a banquet surrounded by all those looks, so even the knight behaved politely. So the girl agreed to meet him. The knight rejoiced. He said that 2 knights from the Duke were ready for her services. Mew introduced herself to him and asked permission to lead the lady. The girl thought that if she was led by a girl knight, she would most likely be able to avoid unnecessary rumors. So she gave her hand to the girl and got off the carriage. The girl knight escorted Cecia out, and she looked closer to where she was being led. She assumed it looked like an annex for important guests. The lady thought she would meet other people there, but there was no one. When they reached the doors, the knight said the Lord was waiting for her inside. The girl knocked and started to enter the room. Hearing his voice, the girl noticed that he had a soft and familiar voice and saw Diane in front of her. The girl was very surprised, but thought that she was confused about something and she had to get ready quickly because it was a meeting with the Duke. She couldn't believe she had mixed them up. The girl missed Diane more than she realized. She approached Duke Carthius and said she had come as he wanted to see her there. He addressed her by the name of Shah. The girl was very surprised because he looked like the guy she had treated in the village. The man who called her by that name was Diane. The Duke started to turn around, and then the girl realized that it was indeed Diane. He told her that if he had known it would be so hard to see her again, he would never have left her clinic then. The girl was completely shocked by this turn of events. She had never expected that her assumptions would be true and that Diane would be standing in front of her. A wave of memories came over the girl of him telling her not to do anything to his arm because it would heal quickly, and of her touching his arm and telling him she had to help. The man remembered how she had healed his wound, so also got the poison out. He told the girl that if she had lived on his lands from the beginning, many people in Kartia would not have died of poisoning. That night when the girl was found, the guy heard the sounds of hooves from the direction of the girl's house. When Diane came to her house, he was shocked because he was late and there were no transported villagers in that village. Nor did he see any nobles to take her away. The nobles who had taken her could only be her own family, and it seemed the only way for them to meet was to go back to where he was going. The boy was going to the land of Kartia, where he was to arrive after the test was over. The girl was in astonishment and said he told her he was from the wrong lands. But she realized he was not a foreign aristocrat, but the Grand Duke and Dan Kartia himself. The man said he was not a nobleman of this empire, but they served the same emperor. The girl said that though separated by borders, they revolve in the same social circles, and surely he must have heard rumors about her and known about them before he arranged this meeting. The boy said he had heard them, but he didn't believe them because they were based on lies. The girl said that many people have said that, but they always turned their backs on her when the count pressured them and presented false evidence to keep the rumors going. and she became a woman who led men around by the nose. Kezia was desperate and almost crying, and Diane realized that even a couple of days were enough to make her refreshing smile disappear and change to a sad face. He said if she didn't believe him, he could prove it to her. Diane said he would stand in front of everyone and say he knew her different, not from rumors but the real one. The girl turned around and said she didn't need to do that, and she was glad to meet him and didn't even realize how much she missed him and wished they could talk like that one more time, and that was the end of it. Kezia said that she had heard him called the kindest and friendliest of nobles many times, and he was the complete opposite of her. She said he was even hailed as a symbol of virtue, and no one would challenge his purity. The boy thought to himself that it was all a lie, because he didn't understand what part of him could be called pure. So he asked the girl if she was rejecting him just because of the rumors about him. She said that was it, because she didn't want him dragged into her problems, and thanked Diane, saying that he'd given her the strength to endure it all a little longer. She advised him to pretend that he didn't know her. There was no way Diane wanted to do that, because he wanted to get even closer to her. Among the 4 main families of the garden, the seductive radical is known for seducing others but not seducing herself. The girl turned and said that she would pretend not to know him, and this was the last act of her kindness. Right at that moment, it was Diane who was seduced because he didn't want to break the bond between them. The guy came up behind Kezia and asked if she was really afraid she would drag him into her problems. The girl asked him to let her go because someone might see. And Diane told the girl not to think that he is such a blameless man based only on rumors, and he doesn't care what anyone says about her. He said if she thinks he's afraid to get involved in all the rumors, that's bullshit. They said goodbye, and the girl said she would go to the banquet already. The boy decided to admit to himself that he didn't want her because of the mysterious power that had saved him. He just wanted her gentle smile that charmed him. He didn't know how she had healed him, and he didn't want to know he could take her back to Karshia with him. Diane wanted to make sure that happened, and the girl never returned to her home again. Kezia walked out wondering what Diane was going to do. The servants asked if they had finished their conversation and said they could escort the girl wherever she needed to go. Kezia didn't want to go to the banquet, but there were only disgusting things waiting for her as she left. So the girl told them to take her to the banquet. She was shocked that Diane wouldn't pretend not to know her. She thought she would never see him again, so she was very happy. But they shouldn't communicate because she doesn't want to hurt him by him knowing her. When the girl went into the palace, she saw many people there and very many fine dishes. People started whispering when they saw her and talked about how she had a very big dare if she came to this banquet. They were wondering what kind of scandal she would make this time. The guests talked about absolutely everything about the girl, her jewelry, her clothes. Suddenly, the girl heard the gentleman tell the Duke that he never thought Diane would come all this way to attend his little event and asked him to come over for a second. Diane was saying that they could do without such formality. The man said he was embarrassed to introduce Duke Karthia, who had traveled such a long way to meet with them. The Marquis handed the man a glass of wine, and everyone raised their glasses in honor of his lordship, saluting the Grand Duke. Kezia raised her wine glass as well, but her brother lowered her hand, pouring the wine over her. He said there was no point in her repeating after the others. Theod said it was no big deal that she got wine spilled on her dress, since it was red anyway. With a smirk on his face, he looked at the girl who was all stained. And he told her not to even think of talking to the Duke, and added that he was the one who was saying this just in case, because someone like her shouldn't take up the time of important people. Theod told her not to do anything foolish and to get on with what she was told so as not to disappoint her mother. The girl thought about the fact that she wasn't even going to approach him, and without her brother's words. Kezia didn't bother to argue with Theodore. She didn't want the rumors to hurt the man who said he believed in her, so she decided it was best for them to remain strangers. For his sake and hers, she decided to turn around and go home. She realized that her stepmother would probably be unhappy that she had returned so early, but she didn't want to stay there even for a minute. A wine glass started to fall on the girl, but suddenly someone held it down. It was Diane, and he set down his glass and stooped down to wipe the wine that had gotten on his dress. In a whisper, he called her his lady, and said he'd heard she liked to do things in front of others and wanted to fool around a bit, nothing serious. He touched his hands to her legs and stroked one of them. He looked at the girl, who was embarrassed, and said that she even had it written on her face that the rumors were lies, and if they were true and she had deceived him, it was no big deal. He loved her anyway, and he told her to come with him. The girl stood in a stupor and couldn't even say a word to him. Suddenly, a maid ran up to them and asked him not to get his precious hands dirty because she would clean everything up quickly herself. The master of the banquet came up from behind and asked if the Duke was all right. They all started milling around him, but Diane ignored them and asked if Caesar was all right. The Marquis said she was fine and asked to go the other way, and the girl realized that she had to go back quickly. She was pleased that Diane had taken care of her, but he didn't have to do that. Caesar remembered as she walked that he had suggested she come with him, but she decided to pretend she hadn't heard anything. Turning back around, she saw him looking at her. She was embarrassed and quickly went out because she realized that only a terrible scandal awaited them, and all the newspapers would write about the fact that the purest man had something in common with the most promiscuous lady of the empire. But the girl reflected that it would even make her life easier, because even if everyone thought she was a promiscuous woman, no one would dare say such a thing about the mistress of the Grand Duke of Carthia. Caesar didn't want to sully his kindness and consideration with such vile things, and she decided that she should be patient with her fate and leave other people out of it, especially such a kind and pure duke. The girl approached the coachman and asked him to take her to Leaden Manor. The girl decided that she would rather burn in those flames herself than let Diane get hurt. She didn't want him to get in any trouble because of her, and she was getting ready to be reprimanded by her stepmother. When Caesar got home, her stepmother yelled at her and talked about how she had forgotten about the assignment she had given her and asked how she even dared to come crawling back to the manor since the banquet had just started. She yelled at her for leaving Theovis alone and clutching a fan in her hands. She yelled at the girl because she had left her brother alone, and the place was full of people who might say rude things to him. The stepmother called the maids and ordered them to wash Caesar and locked her in a warehouse. The woman told her not to go back to her room and to think about her mistakes. The woman was totally furious and, as always, ill-disposed against the girl. Caesar was desperate, because as always she had been punished for nothing. As the girl took her bath, she thought about whether or not things would have changed for Theodas if she had stayed at the banquet. She decided to stop thinking about it and continue to bathe. But the lady wondered if getting a stepmother's favor was much better than embarrassing Diane. Caesar suddenly noticed some noise. The maids also noticed something chiseling very loudly. Suddenly, the stepmother opened the doors and started yelling for them all to finish quickly. The maids ran up to the girl with her things. The stepmother kept yelling for them not to stand as pillars, to help her. The maids apologized. The stepmother said they had an important guest and ordered them to quickly pack up and bring Caesar to the guest room. The stepmother was frightened and did not understand what had happened and why he had come. The girl quickly gathered herself and went out to her stepmother. She started yelling at Caesar because she had caused her some trouble again. The girl was surprised to hear that she had caused some trouble. The stepmother pointed with her hand at the doors, said that the Grand Duke of Carthia had arrived and was waiting for her in the guest room. The girl was frightened and didn't understand why he had come straight there. Her stepmother said he had asked to see her in person so she would go alone, but ordered her to start begging for mercy right away. The stepmother told her to come in if she understood. When the girl went in, she saw the Duke of Carthia and asked him why he was looking for her. He said he had come for an answer he hadn't gotten at the banquet and put down his mug of tea. Diane said she'd had plenty of time to think it over. He asked if she was deceiving him or if she would believe him that he didn't care about the rumors about her, because he himself was already so clean and Caesar was in a stupor. The girl noticed that he didn't seem at all concerned about the consequences that could be caused by such actions. She realized that she had been worrying about nothing. Diane took her hand and motioned for her to sit down, for starters. Caesar realized that she wasn't concerned at all about what they were saying. She addressed him formally, but he said that there was no need for formalities and that she should just say Diane. The girl said that when she had saved him, she had not thought that he would turn out to be a duke. and Deanne teasingly asked if that was why she had allowed herself to slap his hands. The girl got very embarrassed, and the guy smiled. Guy says he doesn't know what about the Grand Duke, but Deanne is willing to forgive her. Caesar told Deanne that he'd better stop before the rumors get worse, and she's worried that they could do a lot more damage than he thinks. She said she doesn't know how it works in the duchy, but the Empire's high society is filled with people that are dirtier and nastier than he thinks. Deanne remarked that the Empire was rife with nasty rumors and asked what he thought of Cartia then. The girl didn't understand what he meant, and he asked if she wanted to be the young Duke's wife and lifted her hand to kiss it. The girl became very embarrassed and asked what he was talking about. Deanne smiled at the girl. The guy said he had no desire to leave her in that pit of filth and danger, and added that if she was afraid she'd ruin his reputation, let her tell her parents that he clung to her until the very end. Deanne told her to pretend to give up and asked her to come with him. Deanne said there were 3 poisonous snakes in Cartia, but this place was clearly better than the Empire. The girl was shocked. After such an offer to become the wife of the Great Duke, she didn't even know how to answer him, and realized that if she agreed, she could get rid of all the rumors. Caesar asked why he would go so far for her, and he asked her to remember their conversation at night when they were gathering herbs. He said that's when he found someone he could trust. Deanne saw in her the girl he would want to spend all his days with. Her smile mesmerized him, and her eyes were so deep that he sank into them. After Deanne's words that he had found someone he could trust, the girl suggested that maybe he needed her healing power because he had mentioned that he wanted to know her secrets. Caesar didn't understand why she continued to be afraid of someone who sat right in front of her, and said bluntly that he trusted her. Caesar said that she was sure he had vassals who were well aware of the Empire's high society, and he should talk to them first and see if they would support a wedding to Caesar Layden. The girl decided that if she might want to change her mind later, she'd better do it now, as she wouldn't want a betrayal from someone she would trust. Deanne, putting down his mug, said that he was sure the vassals would be against it. The girl didn't doubt that her consent was useless, because if the duchy didn't accept her, her vote wouldn't be counted. When she heard that the vassals would not accept her, she was disappointed, but Deanne said it was all right. He said that everything is as it should be, especially with the things the snakes tell him not to do with everyone. The man lifted the girl's hand to kiss it and said he was proposing marriage to her because he needed her. The girl was shocked and asked if he really needed her, and asked about whether she would be able to live in that place as she did in the clinic, and whether she would be able to breathe in the fresh night air at any time. Duke told the girl that of course she could do that. Sessions said that honestly she missed him too. The girl said that if she could leave a place where everyone thought she was a villain, she was willing to marry him and move to Cartia. Deanne said that in that case, she should not forget that she would soon be his wife, and in his absence, she would be his representative and the only person who could act on his behalf. One of the Duke's knights approached Caesar's parents and asked if the Duke was looking for them. He nodded and opened the door for them. When they entered the room, they immediately bowed to him and apologized because they thought their daughter had caused an inconvenience. They said they would be sure to have a serious talk with her and make sure it wouldn't happen again. The Duke gave the girl this cloak and said that there was no need to do so, and that he had many faults, and it was very difficult for him to persuade their precious daughter. The girl's father did not understand what the Duke was saying and asked in bewilderment what it all meant. Deanne said the conversation was long, but she agreed to his proposal. The girl's parents stood in shock, and the Duke said he was going to call a flower carriage. The stepmother was shocked and realized it was most likely a proposal. She clutched her fan in her hands and didn't realize what was happening. The Duke turned to one of the knights and asked him not to keep his dear guest waiting long and to hurry to call the flower carriage. The knight promised to do everything as quickly as possible. The girl's father appealed to the Duke and said that he thought there was some mistake, but the Duke said that there was no mistake and his daughter would soon become Caesar von Rodica Cartia. Deanne said that he was of course well aware of how dear their daughter was to them, and so he asked for their blessing so that she might know more happiness. They needed to be alone until the carriage arrived, and he asked them to leave. The parents left the room, leaving them behind. They overheard Diane saying that he was very happy that Shah would be in Kartia, but he called her by another name. The stepmother was furious. She didn't understand what was going on here. Kezia said that she too was looking forward to her move, but suddenly she noticed that Diana's face was dejected. The girl asked what was wrong. Diane apologized that he was only saying it now. The guy said that Kartia could be very different from the empire. The girl, surprised, said that she knew that and there was nothing wrong with that. Diane said that even though Kartia has sworn allegiance to the emperor and their social circles touch, the cultural differences have gone nowhere because they are different nations. The boy sighed and said that there were people in those lands that he was interfering with. The girl jokingly asked if they hindered as much as she did his family. The guy laughed and said not really, because they are much rougher and very hard to deal with. The girl asked if that wound was inflicted by either of them. And Dan said that he couldn't believe that his wife was not only sweet, but also smart, and he had a very big luck for Kartia. Kezia didn't understand how he could say such embarrassing things so easily. Her face turned red after saying such words. Diane said she was right, and he was poisoned with the paralyzing poison of the Tier family, and the antidote was a secret, just like her. And anyway, the Tier family wasn't the only one that could get them in trouble with dangerous poisons. He said it wouldn't be long before she learned about the garden he brought her to, and the dangers there were different from those in the empire. The girl was surprised to hear garden, and the guy said he promised her that he and his men could be trusted, so they could ride together on the flower carriage. And he said he would ride along with her. Giving her his hand, they went together. A girl knight came to the door and told the Duke that the flower carriage was almost here and everything would be ready soon. The boy invited the girl to come downstairs, and holding hands, they were about to leave. Diane said that the carriage might look unsightly because it was hard to prepare in such a short period of time. The girl was very impressed with it because she saw before her the floral ducal carriage that was often talked about in high society. The girl never thought to take a ride on something that was so much rumored about. Kezia told Diana that the carriage was very beautiful. Her eyes shone with happiness. But suddenly, the girl saw her parents behind her, asking why the Grand Duke was leaving them so soon. They said they would have liked to show more hospitality if he had stayed there longer. It was the first time Kezia had seen them so frightened and obedient. Diane noticed them falling at their feet before those who were stronger and expressing a disgusting arrogance toward the weak. He felt a familiar disgust when he was around them, so he said that his bride had no desire to remain there. And since the flower carriage for them had already arrived, he would like to show her his lands as soon as possible. He suggested that she start their trip by calling her by a different name again. The girl's father tried to stop him, saying something about the dowry and trying to get the Duke's attention somehow. But Diane said he planned to listen to his bride's opinion in such things. He turned and asked the girl what they were going to do. The lady said she was Kezia. Her stepmother said with tears in her eyes and a smile that she hoped she would be okay. She smiled, and the girl didn't understand how come her stepmother was smiling at her still and wishing her well after what she had done. She had never even considered Kezia to be human, and here she was wishing such wishes in her direction, also smiling. The girl thought it was probably hypocrisy. The guy stroked the girl's cheek and told her not to force herself to smile, because those people couldn't hurt her anymore. The brother didn't say goodbye though, and asked if they would see each other at the banquet. The girl looked at Thed and began to remember that even at a small age he had shown a talent for dark magic and used the practice as an excuse to set disgusting insects on her. He was a very brash child and allowed himself anything that would bring pleasure. Kezia didn't have the dark magic to resist him, so she only had to play the victim, and the banquets where she had to cover her mistakes were even worse. There she was talked over and humiliated in every possible way by the guests, and it was hard for the girl to endure such an attitude towards herself. The fact that Thed spilled wine on her was a mere mouthpiece compared to what he did on a daily basis. Usually, because of the rumors his stepmother spread, people only looked sympathetically at him, and she was the troubled sister who was haunted by horrible scandals. The girl said that if she were to attend the banquet, she would already be present as the Duchess of Kartia. Dane confirmed and said that everything was correct and that no one would dare to look down on her, because her part would become his part and his power would become her power. Everyone was completely shocked. The girl asked her brother if he had heard the Duke, and said that if their paths crossed again, let him address her as Duchess. Everyone was terrified, and the stepmother never thought Caesar capable of intimidating anyone. For she was always quiet. When they said, "Get out," she would walk away, and if they threw something at her, she would get a kick and go to her room where she would sit for days. They considered her trash, who couldn't even use the family's dark magic. When Caesar got into the carriage, she asked for the door to be closed, and Dayan said he knew very little about what her life was like in that house, and ordered the knight to close the doors. He couldn't even imagine the horrors she endured there every day. Her stepmother was in shock because everything she knew about Caesar Leiden was just a lie, and she just kept her head down because she didn't have enough strength and someone who could support her. They started to leave, and the girl asked Duke if everything was going to be okay. Dayan said that all her worries were in vain because she was safe now. He stroked the girl's hair and kissed her forehead. He said that everything would be fine, and she would never go back to those unpleasant places that gave her only negative emotions and pain. Dayan said with a smile that she shouldn't worry about anything because this nightmare was already over. The girl was very pleased with his soft voice. She realized that he would not deceive her. She thought she was in paradise, next to such a man. The servants brought news to the woman that a flower carriage was coming from the outskirts and would soon be at the entrance to the garden. She was furious and shocked. The man who was sitting at the table suddenly jumped up and shouted Idian's name. He didn't understand how it happened that a foreign bride was on her way to them. The older man noticed that the Tyr were already preparing their bride and Idian was doing things his way. The man was shocked because the previous duke's wife was from Henia, and the one before him was from Satia, and the next one was supposed to be a Tyr. He was furious and slammed his fist on the table and shouted Idian Roddick's name. He was very angry because he had done everything he could to end the Duke on that test. Rithenia, Helen Sadie, and Kevin Tyr were the heads of the three families that usually kept each other in line and had come together a few months ago to choose a new Grand Duke. The third Grand Duke was again a man from the house of Rodica. The older man said that if Idian took the seat, Roddick's family would be impossible to defeat. The woman said that was why they had gathered to solve this problem. The man who had been furious immediately calmed down and said that all of them realized that they needed to do a test of the hair, which would be their chance. He suggested that they instruct the candidates from their families and unite to kill Diana and gain power. After the ordeal had begun, a carrier pigeon delivered a message. The man began to read it and saw that it said that his son had succeeded because they had united as he had said, and that Idian Rodica had been poisoned by Tyr's poison. The man provided the sheet and said that according to the message, Dayan Rodica was no longer alive, so they could choose who would be the next duke. He thought that the secret alliance to contain the Rodica family would soon complete the plan, but the first person to return to Carthia territory was Idian Rodica, who had been poisoned by Tyr's venom. The man was furious and cursed his son for not being able to handle such a task. The older man said they needed to stop the flower carriage before they reached the central castle. The woman said it was too late to harness the horses and they would only see his carriage pull inside. She said he did wrong because he came back to break the written rule about choosing the bride of the Tyr family and brought a foreigner. The woman thought about the fact that if they knew the details, they might have a chance to crush the perfect Rodica, because the garden they're pulling into is poisonous and blooms all year round. In order that they not prepare to drive to the central castle, because she's sure that Idian Rodica on the flower carriage thinks that's where they'll stop. Dayan told Cecia that they would be in Carthia soon. The girl had just woken up and didn't realize what he was saying. When Cecia realized she was asleep, she jumped up sharply and was startled. The Duke introduced her as a bunny again and said that they needed to get some things ready before stopping by. He said she would probably realize, having seen that the outside was indeed a dangerous place. The girl looked out and was shocked because there were so many poisonous plants. Dayan asked if she could hold out her hands to him. Cecia was surprised to hear that he wanted to see her hands, but she lifted them up and saw that they were starting to turn a little red. The Duke started to put gloves on the girl's hands and said that she would have to wear them for a while. Dian said that wasn't all and suggested she put a cloth over her face. The girl was shocked because she didn't think she would have to cover her face. The guy said it's about the cloth that purifies the air. Dian told the knight that they were ready and let him open the gate for them. He got in the carriage and told the night girl that they were ready, and they started driving. When Caesar looked out the window, she assumed that the place where the knights were standing was Dian's lands. The boy said that they were the lands of his family called Radhika. He said the lands that are dotted with red flowers are ruled by the Sethi family. Dian said that there are 4 properties in total, as there are also Henya and Tyr. The boy said that all the territories of Kartia belonged to him. Caesar was shocked, because all the Grand Dukes she knew were from Roddick's family, and asked if members of other families could also claim to be a Grand Duke. Dian asked if that was what she wanted since she was asking so much. The girl said she was just curious because it was very different from the Empire. Dian asked if she was sure she was going to be okay. Caesar didn't understand the question and asked what he meant, assuming he was asking about her making a lot of enemies. The guy said that 3 families wanted to take his life, and they only wanted him, not her. After the previous Duke and Duchess had died on their way to power, only Dian was left, and they were going to inform the Empire that a side branch of the family would rule the duchy. Now Caesar could see why he was sure he was the only one who would be attacked. The girl realized that this was unfamiliar ground, and the only person she knew was Dian. She had to walk in uncomfortable gloves, but she decided it was still better than staying in that house. Caesar said she was okay because there were poisonous snakes in this world that only bit her, so she wouldn't run away from him anywhere because she was protected with him. Dian told Caesar to look, pointing with his hand to the window. He said that they had already arrived at the place and showed her the central castle where they would be staying. The girl was mesmerized by the beauty of the castle. When they left, the Duke said that Caesar could change everything in the castle as she wished and customize every corner to her liking. Suddenly, the girl noticed that some people were cleaning something. She didn't realize what the mess was and saw that there seemed to be some kind of fire. Dian's face changed when he saw his 3 obnoxious guests in front of him. He knew they would start moving when they heard about the flower carriage, but he didn't think so quickly. The girl noticed they had capes of different colors and assumed they were the heads of the families Dian had mentioned. Caesar realized they were his enemies, but she didn't know if she should greet them for the sake of decorum. Dian told Caesar to listen to him carefully and memorize that since she had come there with him in a flower carriage, she was now a lady of the House of Kartia. The girl noticed that those people didn't seem to like this sacrilege at all, as they looked very hostilely in their direction. Duke told her to remember that she was above for them, and she should only trust Roddick's family. Dian assured her that if she followed those rules, the place wouldn't be filled with nightmares. She would be very much welcome to live there. One of the men who were standing across from the Duke was furious because they glared at them and just walked away. But on the other hand, the Duke and his fiancée don't have to say hello to them, but they completely ignored them. This made each of them very angry. They were shocked by this behavior. The woman thought at first that the girl wanted to hide her appearance, but then she realized that she only covered her face because she was immune to the pollen that flew in the air of Kartia. The Duke's knight approached the uninvited guests and said that the Duke had no intention of receiving guests today. They were furious because not only did he just glare at them without greeting them, but he also started to chase away respectable people. The older man didn't understand why he was so spoiled, but he wrote it off as Dian Radhika being too young, and the woman noticed that the old man had just fallen over from shock. The old man said that Idian had not yet milk on his lips, and he already thinks that the Great Duke can do anything. The woman began to explain to the knight that familiarity with the heads of families is obvious when a duke brings a foreign woman with him. The knight calmly said that the duke ordered to postpone everything for 3 days. The older man insulted Idian and started yelling about how the pathetic knight dared to tell them what to do, and questioned if he thought the duke's cousin was allowed to do anything. He started shouting that Idian broke the written rule about a bride from the Thierry family, and he should apologize for ignoring customs, and he wouldn't even let them in, and yelled at the knight to get the hell out of there. The Duke Knight just calmly said that he would go and hoped that the way back would be safe for them. The older man was very annoyed with the knight because he thought that he was only pretending to be polite when he really wasn't. A representative of the other family said he didn't like the whole thing because Roddick's family had occupied the castle for generations, and the representatives had turned their noses up so high they pierced even the clouds, and said they had missed the perfect opportunity at the trial. The other heirs were in hiding and hard to find, so the man didn't know the whereabouts of even his dumb son after receiving that message about Edian's death. The woman said there was nothing more for them to do there, and it was time to go back. The men agreed with her and realized that now they would have to bide their time until they found the son of the Thierry family representative. The representative decided to look for every opportunity to send Dan Rodica to the other world and then organize another test of the heirs. He calculated that if Edian died, his family would be left with one last candidate, but he was useless trash with low resistance to poisons. They decided that Edian Rodica should pay for daring to look down on them. The man called his servant and asked him to bribe some of Rodica's men. He wanted to teach the arrogant duke because there was nothing he could do alone in this garden. He wondered how long Ediana's foreign wife would last. The man thought with a smile that he would succeed, because if Dian wanted to protect his foreign wife, he would have to bow his head to them. He was even satisfied after meeting him, as now they would be able to completely dominate him in the garden. Edian told the girl to trust only Roddick's family, and then she would have a very good and nightmare-free life in that place, and suggested that Caesar go inside. The girl asked if it would be okay if they just left. Dian said it was fine because he had ordered to postpone the meeting for 3 days, because it will be hard to deal with them when they are so tired. Caesar said he's right, they need to rest. Dian told the girl that she would meet those people when she got more information, and then there would be no problem. The girl realized that now she only knew their names, so she wouldn't be able to help Dian in any way, and told him that she would help him when she learned a little. The Duke walked his girlfriend to the castle. She said his castle was very large, but she had the feeling that some items were missing, and she noticed that everyone was busy changing the decor of the manor. Caesar looked out the window and told Dian that there was some kind of fire outside. He said she got it right and all the flower beds were burning. The girl thought so because she had seen a pile of ashes in the garden, but she was shocked that everything had burned. Dian said that it was dangerous to stand by the window and dragged her to his room, telling her that no one was hurt and that she shouldn't worry because he had started the fire. Caesar was shocked, and the guy said that there were too many poisonous plants that could harm people from the outside world, and the girl realized it was because of her arrival. Dian suggested that she go further so he could show her her room. As they walked, Dian told her that in the castle, she might not have to wear a mask. The girl noticed that the air was different from the corridor air, and when she took off her mask, she realized that it would even be easier for her to think this way. The Duke said that he had instructed her to prepare the furniture she needed, and she could change everything at her discretion because she was his bride and could dispose of things as he did. Caesar stood in a stupor. The Duke did not understand what was wrong with her. In fact, the girl was wondering if she would really become the Duke's wife or if she would be dragged back to the Count. All these thoughts came over her because the room Dan had given her reminded her of the one at Ledeen Manor, and she realized that her freedom could end in an instant. Dian was disappointed and asked if she had gone all the way and been there for him, only to end up saying she didn't want to be his bride. Caesar denied all of that and looked at him sweetly. A smile appeared on Dian's face, and he said that unwanted guests would be arriving in 3 days, and there was no avoiding it, and for now he would ask her to bring all the necessary things. The Duke reassured the girl and told her that there would never come a time which she would have to go back to Leiden Manor, and told her not to worry because he would never let her go because she had come to scary places, so she wouldn't run away now. Dian said that the snakes would definitely want her to leave, but the safest snake in the garden is him, so she should always stay close to him. He said that her room was lit with light benefactors that purify the air, and she had better stay in her room until the necessary steps are taken, for all Karshia to know that she is to be his wife. The Duke said he was sure the heads of families didn't like her, and they might call her a stranger because she came from the Empire, but he was used to liking anything they didn't like, and she had accepted his proposal, so their wedding was already predetermined, and he would never refuse her. Cecil looked very tired, so Diane told her to get a good rest after such a long trip. That was how Cecil's first day in the Duchy of Cartia ended. The girl was quite tired after such a busy day. Suddenly, there was a very loud noise in the castle since morning. The maids were running around. The knights were asking what the noise was all about since morning. One of the maids was yelling that they needed a doctor in the bride's room quickly and immediately. The girl was lying all red. The male healer thought that all the poisonous plants near the manor had already been dealt with, but he was suddenly dragged there because the flower carriage bride wasn't feeling well. When he examined the girl, he realized that she came from outside because that hair color was hard to find in Cartia. He didn't understand why her skin still reacted so badly. After all, they had already burned everything. The healer examined the girl's skin. It was all red. After touching her forehead, he realized she had a fever and assumed she had inhaled small poisonous particles that were bad for people's skin. Suddenly, Dan came up from behind. He asked how his wife was feeling. The man was frightened, but said that her life was not in danger, but she had the same symptoms that the residents from the garden had as children, a minor allergy with complications. Diane was surprised to hear that she was allergic. The boy asked the healer if he was talking about those skin diseases that appear in young children. The doctor said that was it, and while many are born with a high natural resistance to poisons, there are exceptions, and some are sensitive to the local air, just like Moon. Diane remembered that he had also had something similar. He had to prepare in advance for such a turn of events, and now he realized that even if he burned all the plants in the manor, the garden air itself was different from the imperial air, and Ceci's health could be damaged by it. The doctor said her symptoms are a little more serious because she wasn't born in the garden. Since she came from outside, he should not forget that the blanket is made from garden materials, and so they should take it away and change it for silver cloth. The maid got to work on it immediately. Diane thought about how he had no idea that even a blanket could have that effect, but remembered that the silver cloth was also made from garden materials, and he wasn't sure how her skin would react because she had gotten sick even after purifying the air with light herbs. They needed to look for other options quickly. Diane was about to leave the room and asked to be informed immediately when Cecil woke up. The doctor told the maid that the gentleman seemed restless today, and they did not understand what made him so nervous, but blamed it on his wife's sudden illness. The seductive Roddick's family wore a sky blue flower emblem, and she was also known for her resistance to poisons, and even among the 4 main families of the garden. Idian Roddick, who was the current Grand Duke of Cartia, stood out even among his relatives to the extent that he had never experienced skin allergies. The case of the theater family's maid pretending to accidentally give Diane poisoned food and him eating it without any trouble has long been a popular story among high society. But not everyone in Roddick's lineage was like that, and the most famous exception was Diane's cousin, Moon Roddick, who was now his knight. Knight Moon and Miu talked about the fact that the Duke's wife had allergies, and there was a lot of noise from the morning. Moon said that it was all natural, because she was riding in a flower carriage, and she was obviously not just a guest, but the future wife of the great Duke, and it was clear to anyone that a person outside had little chance of surviving in the garden. The girl knight handed him the breathing herb. Moon could only move around outside after taking the breathing herb. This herb is a plant that blocks the effect of pollen, and he constantly took it because of his weak body. But Muin's sister was different from him because her resistance was closer to Level and Diana, and when he took the herb, she was very uncomfortable with the smell. Muin apologized to Miu and said that he had no choice, and because of the new wounds, he would have to chew harder than usual, and that's why there would be a harsh smell. Miu told him that the Lord had told them to pay special attention to his fiancée. It was strange for her to call a girl from the outside world as mistress. The girl also added that he had ordered them to keep surveillance on her family. Moon was surprised and asked if they would be watching those mages and realized that they would have to do a detailed investigation. And the knight began to look for some information because supposedly they should have it in the archive, and went through the books on the shelves looking for the surname Leiden. Suddenly, his sister jumped with fright and realized that something had happened behind the door. Myung asked what happened this time because they've been having some problems since morning all the time. Mayum said she was going to check it out. When they opened the doors, they heard that the girl wanted to kill herself. The two of them didn't understand what was going on. Idiot was reviewing the sheets and thinking about his wife. He couldn't concentrate because she wouldn't leave his mind. Suddenly, a knight burst into his room shouting at him, and he asked him to be quiet. But he did not pay attention to the order of the Duke and began to shout something, "Girl, that is, the bride Diana wants to kill herself." The Duke was completely shocked and jumped out of his chair.